Part 200. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1991. To the three of them, this is as strange as you don't even know rice. Feng Zonping took a breath under the strange gazes of the three, and was speechless. Zhao Liaolang and a few classmates have already listened to the poems below. Although they are not very good at writing poems themselves, they can still appreciate them. They got together and devalued their poems to only half a penny, and then agitated them among them. The best homework by Shan, Yixiang, and Yin Or wrote a poem together and won the selection. Ask for a lottery, we haven't eaten the lottery of the Zhuangyuan building. Just as he was talking, the bottom floor announced loudly, today's first show with chrysanthemum as the theme is Lu Xiafo of Qiuazixiu. Bai Shan let out a few ha, and leaned on the window to look down, and saw Lu Xiafo standing on the edge of the second floor, saluting all around him, and immediately someone gave him a lot of money. Feng Zonping clicked his tongue and said, Lu Xiafo is not bad. Man Bao pointed to a place and said, Senior brother Bai. Bai Erlang probed to see, it's really my brother. He put his hand directly to his mouth and shouted at the bottom, brother, come here. The people downstairs heard the sound coming from the third floor, and couldn't help but look up. Bai Dalan also looked up. Although his eyes were a little bad, the second half of his body was about to lean out of the window and he was excited to wave at him. Isn't that his brother? Bai Dalan lowered his head, trying to pretend he didn't know this guy. But the classmates sitting beside him already recognized Bai Erlang, and they also saw Bai Shan and Zhou Man beside him. There is no way, my classmates, there are only 20 people in a class. It is clear who is and what family background is in less than a month. When Bai Dalan was admitted to the 4 schools on the front foot, his younger brother entered the Taixio school on the back foot. It's so famous that it's hard for my classmates to know. So they directly grabbed Bai Dalan, who bowed his head and pretended not to exist. Zheng Jian, it's your brother. They are on the 3rd floor. I seem to have seen Uncle Zhao Xiaoqiu by mistake. Shall we go up and say hello? Bai Dalan didn't want to go. And Zhao Liaolang and others upstairs also happily surrounded the window and looked down. The eyes of those who didn't like to read were particularly good, and they broadcasted to everyone in real time, hey, your brother bowed his head, he must feel ashamed. Bai call again. I think your eldest brother can't wait to put you back in your mother's womb. Bai Erlang laughed and scolded, go away, my brother doesn't feel ashamed. He writes poetry better than us. The gentleman praised him for his spirituality. My brother is embarrassed. Zhao Liaolang asked, does your brother have any words? Yes, my father gave it to take it, right view. Feng Zonping was stunned for a moment, then he couldn't help laughing, and said, your father saved the effort. Your eldest brother's name is straight and his words are right, so do you want to take letters in the future? Although it is said that a word is a re-explanation of a name, there are not many people who directly use the analysis in Shuowen to extract the word. Bai Erlang didn't think there was anything wrong with this. He said, when my father named us, he was originally selected from Shuowen. My eldest brother is upright and honest, and I am sincere in beauty. What's wrong with directly using the interpretation in Shuowen? Everyone listened and thought about it and found that it was true, so they stopped laughing, and Zhao Liaolang shouted at the bottom, brother Zhengjian, here's a song. The people downstairs didn't know who the big brother was calling, but when Zhao Liaolang said this, everyone who knew Bai Dalan in the building turned their heads to look at him. Bai Dalan. He stood up helplessly, and bowed to everyone before saying, my little brother is naughty, disturbing everyone's yaxing. There were a total of 8 judges sitting on top, and 5 of them were Mr. Qiuazijian. They knew that Bai Ji was a student of their Qiuazijian, so they were very lenient and said with a smile, Mid-Autumn Festival, it's natural to be lively, since everyone I asked you to do it, why don't you just make a song and come up with it, no matter if it's good or not, it's good to have fun. Bai Ji respectfully responded, stared at the title just released for a while, then turned around and picked up the pen to write the next poem. At the moment, some folks sent the poems up, and the judges read them out on the spot for everyone to comment. Many people nodded secretly and felt that Bai Ji did a good job. One of the judges said, "Everyone, let's start too." The prize given by Zhuang Yuanlu this round is a pot of Zhuang Yuanhong. When everyone heard it, they started writing. In the end, everyone commented and found that Bai Dalan's was slightly better, so he took the prize. Bai Dalan hasn't done anything yet, but the people on the third floor are already making a fuss, as if they have won a lot of money. Zhao Liaolang just drank a cup of Zhuang Yuanhong, and he was a little unfulfilled at this time. "Just invite your elder brother up, and we will share his share of the prize." Everyone thought it was a good idea, so they pushed Bai Erlang to invite someone. Bai Shan couldn't help but look at Zhao Liaolang, and after looking at Man Bao, he simply stepped forward and put him and Bai Er's shoulders down. Let's go down together." The three of them went downstairs together. After going down a few stairs, Bai Shan stopped and looked at Zhao Liaolang with a half smile, and asked, "Tell me, what do you want us to do?" Bai Erlang, who was still excited, asked blankly, "What?" Zhao Liaolang put on Bai Shan's shoulder and said with a laugh, as expected of the best reader, "He is really smart, and he can't hide anything from you." Zhao Liaolang looked up and down and saw no one, so he lowered his voice and said, "I want to ask you for something." Bai Shan thought that he didn't say that he was famous in the capital, at least he already had a reputation in the literati circle. If he added some more dry wood, he would have a great advantage in the next year's Jinshi examination. So he nodded and said, "You speak first. I'll borrow some money from you." "How many?" Zhao Liaolang stretched out a finger. Bai Shan glanced at it and nodded, 100 taels, it's easy to say." "What 100 taels, 1,000 taels?" "Bai Shan, what do you want so much money for?" Bai Erlang also came back to his senses and interjected, "No, what does it have to do with asking my eldest brother to go upstairs to borrow money?" Bai Shan said, "You stay honest first." Then he turned his head and asked Zhao Liaolang, "You have to explain it, otherwise you will do something wrong and find out that the money came from us, and we can't get rid of it." "And 1,000 taels, can you afford it?" "You underestimate me, don't you?" "I can't afford it now, but in 2 years, I will leave the Chongquen Museum to seek an official, and my father must not give me some assets? Then I can afford it, that is, this one Qian Liang, you can't charge me interest." He said, "If you agree, I will not only take your eldest brother and classmates to the third floor for a walk, but I can also take him to Princess Xianjiang's flower viewing party tomorrow. How about that?" Bai Shanyi moved. Princess Yangyang married the nephew of the Queen Mother. In June, because the Queen Mother was seriously ill, she returned to Beijing. The brain wants to participate. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1992. But Bai Shan insisted on asking, "Why do you want so much money?" Zhao Liaolang smiled and said, "It's okay to tell you, this year's Mid-Autumn Festival, there are 10 actors from Jiangnan coming to Beijing to perform their skills. I want to see them." Bai Erlang exclaimed, "You whore." Zhao Liaolang covered his mouth and said, "Shut up, is that called whoring? I call it admiration, and the 10 actors in Jiangnan are here to perform. Do you know if they are not selling their bodies?" "Bai Shan, it's too expensive, isn't it? It costs 1,000 taels to meet each other." Zhao Liaolang glanced at him and said, "What do you think? It's not 1,000 taels, I'm just prepared to be prepared, and if you like it, you can't give some gold and silver jewelry to others." Bai Shan said, "Brother Zhao, you have a wife's wife." "It's okay, I'll take her with me later." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. Zhao Liaolang whispered, "Do you agree?" It's not decent to always stand on this step. Bai Shan did the math in his heart, and then said, it's not difficult for us to put together 1,000 taels, but you have to think clearly, brother Zhao, this is $1 million. I didn't think that 1,000 taels was much, but Zhao Liaolang, who really didn't join hands, felt distressed when he heard that Bai Shan converted it into money. But it was only for a while, and it was like a bite from an ant. He waved his hand generously and said, it's my father's half-horse's money. Hearing his arrogance, Bai Shan nodded and said, okay, but you have to write me an IOU. I don't want your interest, but you also have to promise to pay me back within 2 years. Zhao Liaolang nodded with a smile, simple, simple. So the three of them walked downstairs with a smile on their shoulders. Bai Dalan got a pot of champion red, and the man brought it up. He was just about to pour wine for a few close friends and classmates to have fun. When he picked up the bottle, he saw his silly brother come downstairs happily and pull it. He's going to beg for a drink. Brother, let's go up to the 3rd floor for a drink. Zhao Liaolang also said with a smile, brother Zheng Jian, this pot of wine can also be attributed to us. If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have written poetry, so you scored us a cup. Bai Dalan smiled and asked the guy to serve them new wine glasses and pour them wine. Zhao Liaolang stopped, it's boring to drink here, let's go up and drink, how many juniors? If you think about it carefully, Zhao Liaolang is now Bai Shan and Bai Cheng's classmate, but he entered the Kuazijian earlier than them, so he is really their senior. So everyone responded and went up to the 3rd floor with Bai Dalan. Naturally, many people saw the movement here. When they went up to the 2nd floor, they also met many students from Kuazi school. Everyone simply said hello and went straight to the 3rd floor. When they disappeared, someone lowered their voices and whispered, Bai Zhengjian. I haven't heard of it before, but they came down from the 3rd floor just now. One is Uncle Zhao Xiaoqiu and the other seems to be Bai Shan. Bai Shan? Bai Shan from Longzhou. That's right, it's Bai Shan who sued the king of Yizhu to avenge his father. He is now the prince's companion. I saw his papers and articles in the Kuazi Academy in the bookstore last time. Bone. That's it? I heard that his family went to Mianzhou to join a clan uncle a long time ago. This person should be his big brother. Doesn't he have a junior brother named Bai Cheng? It's probably the one called the big brother just now. The poem that Bai Zhengjian made just now is not bad. One family and 3 brothers, it's a good story. Don't know what his name is. Someone who knows interjects, single name is a straight character. Someone thought for a while and said, the trial of seeing will definitely correct the wrongdoing, and it is also a righteous view. Although the person who named him and chose the characters simply took the characters from Shuowen, it was a good wish. I don't know how to behave as a person. Wei Chen, who was sitting beside him, couldn't hold back any longer, and interjected, he is as his name suggests. The people at the nearby tables couldn't help but look at him. Seeing that the people at the table with him were all 18 or 19-year-olds dressed as scholars, they folded their fists and asked with a smile, where is Xiangtai studying? Wei Chen said somewhat reservedly, I'm studying in the Kuazijian. He glanced at a few friends and said with a smile, we are all from the Imperial College. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. Although they knew that there were many Kuazijian students in the Zhuangyuan building, they didn't expect that they would really talk to each other, so they happily chatted with him. Wei Chen has a lot of words. He is not familiar with Bai Ji, but he is familiar with Bai Cheng and Bai Shan, and his friend's brother. It is always right to praise the good side. So he praised Bai Ji as his outstanding literary talent, filial piety, honesty, and kindness. Anyway, all the good words that could be used were hit on him. Not to mention Ji Hao on the side, even Wei Ting was embarrassed. After exchanging names and posts with him, he made an excuse to drag him to the hut in the backyard. Don't exaggerate so much when you praise people. Well, haven't you seen Bai Ji once? People gather together, with Bai Ji and Bai Shan's human as their companions, can they still be bad people? Wei Ting, why didn't you go up and say hello to them just now? Wei Chen waved his hand indifferently and said, didn't you see that they are busy, and they are still with Uncle Xiaoqiu? It's not good for us to go up at this time. Let's visit when we have time. Wei Ting, Ji Hao said that since they entered the palace, they have rarely interacted with the classmates of Quazijian, let alone our classmates from the school. That's because Ji Hao doesn't have a good relationship with them, but I have a very good relationship with them, he said, and they're not people who dislike the poor and love the rich. Could it be that they don't recognize their old friends because they're developed? You think too much. Wei Ting couldn't say anything to him, so he could only say, okay, let's go to the toilet first. Wei Chen held his breath and felt it for a while, then turned around and said, forget it, I'll go back and drink 2 more cups of tea. This thatched hut smells so great, it's a loss to go in now. Wei Ting. He was speechless with anger. The 3 of Bai Shan surrounded Bai Dalan and his 3 classmates on the 3rd floor. Everyone happily drank 2 glasses of wine, sat down and talked about poetry, and stayed there until the sun went down and the sky was getting dark. And then everyone crowded into the 8 windows and watched Chang'an Avenue slowly light up the lanterns. The lamp gate and lamp socket at the gate of the inner city lighted up little by little, showing a phoenix ready to fly in the dim night sky. I feel that the moment when Chang'an lights up is even more shocking than that of Yangzhou City. Man Bao looked at the fire phoenix in the air with bright eyes, and stretched out his fingers. Look, its 2 eyes are red, and the others are all yellow and other colors. Bai Shan nodded again and again, not only in appearance, but also in spirit. Even Zhao Liaolang sighed, the Ministry of Industry has done much better than last year. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1993. The emperor also led his family in the palace to watch the moment when the lights came on. After the phoenix at the inner city gate was completely lit up, the accompanying royal family and relatives wished him a happy Mid-Autumn festival. The emperor replied with a smile, and enjoyed the lanterns and the moon with everyone. This year's Mid-Autumn festival was very simple. Because the Queen Mother was seriously ill, there was no banquet for hundreds of officials, and even foreign vassals who came to Beijing were not summoned. The emperor only invited the royal family members who came to Beijing to enter the palace for a reunion dinner, and then looked at the moon together. Let them go out to play by themselves. Others could still run outside, but unmarried princesses like Chang Yu and Mingde couldn't go out. Prince Gong was still recovering from his injuries, so he couldn't even attend the palace banquet. So the sisters looked at the prince eagerly. The prince didn't pay attention. He was looking down at Chang'an, which was as bright as day. He was weighing in his heart whether to go to his other courtyard for a drink, or to call his friends to his father-in-law's house for a gathering, or to go out to a restaurant. Chang Yu saw that the prince died and did not look back, so he could only shake Mingde's hand. Mingde couldn't really beat her, so she could only turn around and look for the crown princess. The crown prince refused to take them out of the palace. It's very chaotic outside tonight. What are you doing when you have nothing to do? The emperor and the empress will definitely not agree. Chang Yu didn't dare to say a word. Mingde smiled and said, we just follow my brother and don't run around, there will be no danger where my brother is. Prince, what's the matter with him taking 2 younger sisters when he goes to drink? Mingde said, big brother, Zhou Man said, you can't drink too much. Although there are 3 pregnant women in the East Palace now, you can't indulge. Yes, a few days ago, a concubine of the prince was found to be pregnant again. Although the 3rd child was not born and the sex was unknown, The prince and the princess were still very happy. At this moment, I was happy and gave a little discount. The prince thought about it for a while, and did not dare to refuse. Mingda is not afraid of him, and she will definitely sue her father and queen. The prince had no choice but to go and tell the emperor and queen that he would take Mingda and the others out for a walk. The emperor agreed immediately. He looked at his two daughters and said with a smile, "You may have not left the palace for a long time, you may go out for a walk, just bring the guards, don't go to places with too many people, so as not to crowd." Then he turned to the prince and said, "Take care of your sisters." The prince reluctantly responded. As soon as he left the palace, Mingda said, "Brother prince, ask someone to take us to the Zhuangyuan building." The prince glanced at them and asked, "Why are you going to the Zhuangyuan building? Zhou Man is there." The prince grinned at his teeth and guessed that they were going to find Zhou Man, and the matter of leaving the palace might also be caused by Zhou Man. Zhou Man, who knew nothing, couldn't help but sneezed. Bai Shan reached out and grabbed her hand and touched it, cold. Man Bao shook his head, "It may have been a cold wind just now, so it doesn't matter if you sneeze." It was night and the lights were all lit. Everyone was eager to go to the light market, but the most important stage on the first floor of the Zhuangyuan building had only begun. Zhuangyuan building posted a new topic, this time to do strategy theory. Strategy theory accounts for a large proportion in the Jinshi examination. Bai Shan also wanted to check his own level, and there were several people in Changguan Hall who wanted to try their own level. For example, Feng Zonping and Yi Xiang, they also took pen and paper and directly took up a table to write. Zhao Liaolang and the others are not interested in this, they just watch the fun and don't participate, but they speak in a low voice. Bai Dalan and his classmates also participated, and Bai Shan took out a few pieces of paper and handed them to Bai Dalan, lest they have to run downstairs. Zhao Liaolang and the others were sitting at another table drinking and chatting, not knowing what to say. A dozen people laughed slyly. Man Bao looked around and felt that he had nothing to do, so he ran to the window to read the topic, then ran back and sat down to write an article. The competitions are all time limited. After a stick of incense, the gong was knocked down. Bai Shan and the others handed over the written article to the buddies and asked them to take it down. There are many people who will be more than this subject in the Zhuangyuan building. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, so many literati crowd here to express their views on the national policy, so that the officials of the court, doctors of the Imperial College and noble families can see their political opinions and articles. Famous for this. After the evaluation, regardless of the ranking, the articles written can be posted on the wall of the Zhuangyuan building, and they will not go for a month. After writing an article, Man Bao was successfully hungry, so he sat back to his seat to eat food. Zhao Liaolang called friends and wanted to see the results of this game and then change places to play. He winked at Bai Shan and said, "Do you want to go with us?" Man Bao asked curiously, "Where to play?" Lu Yu, who was diagonally opposite, said with a smile but not a smile, "Of course it's going to a fun place, I'm afraid that Zhou Xiao is not very convenient." Everyone at the same table was silent, and it was difficult for everyone to speak. Zhao Liaolang frowned, and Feng Zonping gave Lu Yu a kick under the table. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Feng Zonping turned his head and said to Man Bao, "Let's change places to drink, but you don't like drinking, so let's guess lantern riddles." Others also blamed Lu Yu for whispering, and Zhou Man was no one else. He was also a member of Changguan Museum, and everyone took classes together. How could you make such a joke with her? Man Bao glanced at everyone, then glanced at Lu Yu, reached out and took the bottle of wine, poured a glass of wine, and said to him, "Lu Yu, you have to drink less wine, you know? If the tongue coating is white and greasy, the kidney qi is insufficient, and if you are addicted to alcohol, you will have to come to see a doctor in the future." She imitated his half-smile and said, "After all, in the entire capital, I have the best cure for this disease." This time, not only the people at the table here were quiet, but the people at the next table were also quiet. After a while, everyone couldn't help but burst into laughter. Zhao Liaolang directly patted the table and said happily, "It's all right, I don't have enough medicine to borrow you, so I can play casually." Bai Shan raised his lips and smiled. Lu Yu's face darkened. They may not know what kind of disease Zhou Man is best at, but there are only two diseases that she can cure best in the capital and others can't. One is caesarean section, and the other is male infertility. He cured the prince and became famous all over the world. The atmosphere started to get lively again. Everyone pushed the cups and wished, and Man Bao drank the wine in the cup and concentrated on eating. The judges took half an hour to evaluate, and finally decided the first place was a student named Wang Wenji from Qiaoxiu. As soon as his name came out, everyone in the private room said, "So it's him." Man Bao has also heard his name and heard that he is very good in the Chinese Academy, but this year is already his 4th year in the Chinese Academy. Feng Zongping said, "Originally last year he was going to take the Jinshi examination, but I heard that his family would not let him, so he was stunned to stay in the Qiaoxiu for 2 more years, and this year he only let him go next year, I think next year. Most of the champions are him." See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1994. Bai Shan also knew him. Not only did he know that they met in the library when they were studying at Qiaozi, and compared with him, Wang Wenji at that time was more famous. But it's not certain now, but when it comes to articles, Wang Wenji should be better, and Bai Shan's ranking is 4th. As soon as he read Bai Shan's name, the people in the private room cheered up and asked him to buy wine for everyone to celebrate. After all, it was amazing to get 4th place in the essay competition in the Zhuangyuan building. Feng Zongping said with envy and jealousy, "You can end next year. If my article can be ranked in the top 30, I will also end next year." The voice just fell, and the 7th place was read below, 7th place, Zhou Man. The crowd surrounding Bai Shan was quiet, and Chi turned to look at Zhou Man who was sitting beside him. "Zhao Liaolang, yes, you also wrote it just now." Man Bao said, "The 7th place has no luck, what are you happy about?" In fact, the downstairs was quiet for a while, and someone whispered, "Who is Zhou Man? I haven't heard of it." "I've heard of one, the Imperial Dr. Zhou Man in the Imperial Hospital." "Hey, aren't you raising a bar?" "I've heard of it, and I know she's edited by the Chongquen Museum. But this Zhuman isn't that Zhuman, right? It should be, someone who can be ranked 7th must have some reputation, right? But I haven't heard any scholar named Zhou Man submit a post recently." "It's her, wasn't she on the 3rd floor just now?" The judge who announced the ranking also paused and continued to read, "The 8th place, Yi Ziang." Upstairs, Feng Zongping stared at Zhou Man in disbelief. "I don't believe it, I can't compare to Bai Shan, I admit it, after all, he is smarter than me and works harder than me, but you." Man Bao immediately said, "I'm also smarter and harder than you." Feng Zongping looked constipated. "You may be smarter than me, but you must be no harder than me in studying the collection of classics and history. You are an imperial physician, and you have been compiling medical books. You do so many things every day, and I don't believe your articles. Write better than me." Several of Zhao Liaolang didn't believe it, so they gathered around and asked, "What did you write in your article? Could it be that the judges at the bottom thought that you were a 5th-grade editor, so they flattered you to give you a ranking?" Man Bao said dissatisfiedly, "Am I such a cheater? My article is very well written." She said, "Isn't it just asking about the flood in the Yellow River? In June, we had to quarrel over this matter every time at the Great Court. I have also been familiar with poetry and books since I was a child. It's true, why can't I take the 7th place?" In fact, she thinks her idea is good, but she doesn't know what Bai Shan and Wang Wenji wrote, and they are even higher than her. She hasn't questioned them yet, so why question her? When everyone was quiet, Feng Zongping calmed down and said, "Oh," with a flat face, "I forgot, you are qualified to go to the Great Court." My heart is crazy, so what is it? This is a person who can see the emperor and all the important ministers in the court every month. Even if she does not participate in the important policies of the country, she will listen to her, okay. Zhao Liaolang and others also calmed down in an instant, and immediately dispersed. Forget it, we didn't get the top 3, the champion building has no luck, we can't let them spend money. Bai Shan breathed a sigh of relief, turned his head and said to Man Bao, "Tomorrow, we will come to Zhuangyuan building to read the articles posted." He also wants to take a look at the top 3 articles and compare where he is. Man Bao nodded fiercely, "Why don't you go back and show me your article silently first?" Actually, the idea I wrote was the proposal of Mr. Fang from the Ministry of Industry, but unfortunately the Ministry of Household thought it was too expensive and never agreed, so from 6 months have been arguing and there is no conclusion yet. Man Bao listened to it for 2 months, and felt that Mr. Fang's proposal was very good. Although it cost a lot and took a long time, once it was implemented, it would be beneficial. Moreover, she also wrote some small suggestions of her own, and she felt that she was more perfect. How did she get the 7th place? The judges have already read the 28th, it is Feng Zongping, followed by the 29th is Bai Dalan. As for Bai Dalan's 3 classmates, one is still ahead of him. As soon as he heard Bai Ji's name, he immediately turned his head and said to Bai Ji, "Zhengjian, let's try it together next year. If you can get into the top 30, you can go to the Jinqi subject to try, although the Jinqi is not only for the examination of strategy theory, but also poetry and scriptures, and the papers are also more difficult. But tonight, there are so many talented people in the Zhuangyuan building, including some old people who like to join in the fun. If you can rank in the top 30 here, it is very likely that you will pass the Jinqi High School entrance examination. And after the Mid-Autumn Festival every year, only these 30 people become famous." Bai Ji nodded again and again, and his confidence increased for a while. Bai Erlang has been listening with his ears pricked up. He couldn't hear his name for a long time, so he went to lie down on the window. He could not help but pursed his lips when he heard it until 35. The person who was also listening by the window with their ears perked up saw him and asked him with a smile, "Bai Er, what do you think you are?" Bai Erlang was a little scared, "You won't be on the list, will you? Then, when the gentleman finds out, will he be punished for writing this topic 10 times? Bai Shan, Man Bao, and Bai Dalan also came up and listened with him. Seeing that there was still nothing, they comforted him, "It's all right, we won't tell you, sir." Bai Erlang was about to cry, "I knew I wasn't going to write, you wouldn't know if you didn't tell me, sir." Before going out, Mr. Bai specially told Bai Shan to write an article seriously and check his level. So Mr. Huiwai must ask them in detail about their articles and rankings. When I was sad, I heard the judge read, the 39th place, Bai Chang. The heart that Bai Erlang was holding was relieved, and he became happy. Yes, oh, there are still 39, fortunately they didn't fall off the list, otherwise it would be hard to explain to Mr. Bai Shan and the others also became happy, and Man Bao took out the bearing of a senior sister, "I'll go downstairs in a while and I'll treat you to roast lamb." Bai Erlang said, "This is what you said, then I want to eat too." "No problem. A piece of roast mutton is only 10 cents, she can afford it." Everyone who participated this time heard their rank, so they clamored to change the field. Zhao Liaolang also invited Bai Dalan, "We are going to Chunfenglu, Zhengjian brother, do you want to come with us?" Bai Dalan declined, and Bai Erlang on the side said unceremoniously, "Don't spoil my eldest brother, my sister-in-law is still waiting for my eldest brother in my lampshade." Zhao Liaolang laughed, "Ha ha ha, It turns out that there is still Mr's sister-in-law to accompany you, so we will not disturb you. Let's go, it's busy going to Chunfenglu at the moment, and if it's late, we won't be able to catch up with tonight's event. The show is over. Almost in the wrong place, see you at 9 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1995. Everyone went downstairs in a hurry. Zhao Liaolang asked his entourage to check out, and then winked with Bai Shan and said, "Remember our agreement, be ready tomorrow, I will pick you up at the lobby before noon. By the way, do you want to come with us?" Bai Shan refused. "Tomorrow we are going to Huguo Temple to play, you can just take my brother in the hall." Zhao Liaolang said that there is no problem, the literati who have broken their heads and want to go to the princess banquet are going to make a name for themselves, so that the examiners will have impression points during the scientific examination. But Bai Shan was already famous all over Beijing, even the world, so he didn't need it. He greeted everyone and ran away, and Bai Dalan stood by the gate of the Zhuangyuan building and looked at them, asking, "Where am I going tomorrow?" Bai Shan smiled and said, "I'm about to tell the big brother that tomorrow Princess Yang Yang will hold a flower viewing party, and Zhao Liaolang can take you for a walk. I guess they will write poems about chrysanthemums. Why don't you go back in the evening and think about it?" "Back up tomorrow?" Bai Dalan asked, "Then what is your agreement?" He is not stupid and sweet. Zhao Liaolang's words indicate that he is cooperating with Bai Shan and the others. Bai Shan said, "Let's lend him 1,000 taels of silver." He paused and then said, "Brother Hall, do you want to let Tang uncle pay for this money, or do we pay you interest?" Bai Dalan, he is a powerful son who has to borrow money from you. Doesn't his family give it? Bai Shandao, Brother Hall, there are only 6 brothers in their family, not counting the sisters, and the nephews and nieces behind him. The money that he withdraws from the account room every month is fixed. His father occasionally subsidize him, but it's impossible to have as much as 1,000 taels. Bai Erlang added, "Don't think that he can save money. He is the one who borrows the most money from me in the Chongquen Museum. After the middle of each month, I have to borrow some money, and then I will pay it back at the beginning of the month." Bai Dalan, it sounds so miserable, even worse than the eldest son of the landlord's family. He said, "Okay, I know, I will come out for the 1,000 taels, but does he still pay?" Bai Shandao, "Repay within 2 years, no interest." Bai Dalan was completely relieved, and it was fine, otherwise he would still be very heartbroken if he bought a chance to become famous. Although some scholars who came to Beijing spent thousands or even tens of thousands of taels to become famous, Bai Dalan felt that that person must not be him, he was too prodigal. Bai Erlang said, "Don't worry, eldest brother. Although he is a little poor, he is still very trustworthy, and his daughter-in-law has a lot of dowry, and he will definitely be able to pay it back within 2 years." Bai Shan and Man Bao. Man Bao said, "Bai my father said that it's not good to give money. You even paid attention to the dowry of other people's daughters-in-law." Bai Erlang glanced at her and said, "Am I putting money away? The interest I am charging now is not enough to buy you 2 biscuits in a month. Moreover, he only lends money to acquaintances, and the interest is getting lower and lower, and he doesn't care about the borrower's repayment ability, he just doesn't do it." Who knew that Bai Dalan also said to him, "Your money box has more money than me. You used to be so generous, why do you get into the eyes of money now? In the future, when people borrow money, you can borrow it if you have it, and don't borrow it if you don't have it. What interest do you charge?" Bai Erlang said, "Then what if they don't pay it back? I won't borrow it without interest and no guarantee to get it back." Man Bao and Bai Shan, who were still opposed to the previous sentence, nodded at the same time, and said with conviction, "Yes, you must consider the ability to repay when borrowing money. If you can't get the money back, is it still called borrowing? It's called giving." Bai Dalan, Speaking of you, there was a Zhuangzi when you were young. You have always had more money than me, and never lacked it? How can you love money so much? Bai Shan said righteously, brother, we don't love money, we cherish the relationship between friends. The relationship between friends can't be explained. It's more clear. Man Bao and Bai Erlang nodded fiercely. The three of them had such a good relationship since childhood. They slept in the same bed, but they went out to buy delicious food. They bought it together after they got together. The rest of the money is divided into 3 cents. Back in everyone's hands, the 2 cents have to be saved for the next time. They are still like this. Why are Zhao Liaolang and the others so cheap? Bai Dalan couldn't say anything about them, and just as he was about to drag them to find Daji and others to leave, he heard a surprised voice from behind, Manbao. He looked back and saw the prince and the 2 princesses standing behind him. Bai Dalan was startled, and when he was thinking about whether he was going to give a big gift, Man Bao had already called out in surprise, Mingda, change Io. Then he went straight up and hugged the 2 princesses. Bai Dalan accepted the thought of giving a big salute, and stood aside with Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, waiting for the 3 little girls to hug each other and laugh before stepping forward to bow and salute. The prince nodded slightly with a solemn face, then looked at Mingda and Chang Yu. You can only play for 1 hour, and you must go home after 1 hour. He didn't want to send them over in person, just leave it to the guards. The Zhuangyuan building is in the inner city, not the outer city. As a result, as soon as they got out of the imperial city to the main street, they were dazzled by the crowds on the street and the shining lanterns everywhere. Seeing so many people on the street, the prince was not at ease, so he could only follow for a while. People are sent here. But now the main street is not very accessible for cars. They walked over there for a while, and now he has to walk back. The prince felt that he couldn't drink a few sips of wine tonight, and he was not in a particularly good mood and said to Zhou Man, you should be optimistic about them, don't let them go to dangerous places. Man Bao promised, we'll just walk on the main street in the inner city, and don't go to dangerous places. Dion, young master, don't worry. The prince then nodded to Bai Shan, and then left guards and waiters for Mingda and Chang Yu. He took his guards and eunuch Wu, turned around and left. Watching the prince disappear into the crowd, Man Bao took the hands of the 2 and asked excitedly, how did you get out of the palace? Brother took us out. Mingda turned around and took the lantern from the palace maid's hand, and said happily, look, we guessed this on the way, do you like it? Nice. Chang Yu excitedly said, let's go, I saw a lot of delicious food when I walked all the way just now, but unfortunately my eldest brother's face is so stinky, and we are not allowed to eat outside food, so I dare not buy it. Man Bao thought for a while and said, 1 hour is limited, let's not go back, let's go to the inner city gate, where there are fire phoenixes and lamp sockets, and many lampshades are there, it's beautiful. Bai Shan added, my house also set up a light shed there. When we get tired, we can rest in the shed. Bai Dalan breathed a sigh of relief, that was the truth. Neither Mingdan nor Changjiao had any objections, so the group of people turned around and continued walking, stopping to look at the beautiful lanterns along the way. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1996. Chang Yu smelled the fragrant meat smell. She sniffed and asked Man Bao, why is it so fragrant? It smells like mutton. Man Bao had already seen the barbecue stall that was blocked by a lantern stall, and ran forward in 3 or 2 steps. Chang Yu immediately followed, and exclaimed excitedly, it's really mutton. Seeing Bai Erlang, who had been behind with his elder brother Bai Shan, he immediately stepped forward and stood beside Mingda. Bai Shan and Bai Dalan. Mingda's head turned to see Bai Erlang looking at her happily. Even if she was calm, she couldn't help but blush slightly, and the lanterns hanging everywhere made her blush even more. Bai Erlang said, "Do you like the pearls and fox fur I gave you?" Mingda nodded, "It's beautiful, I like it very much." "As long as you like it," Bai Erlang and her walked behind Man Bao and the others, and asked in a low voice, "Do you like mutton?" Mingda nodded slightly and whispered, "I like it, but I can't eat more." "It's okay, I'll have a meal with you." After speaking, he stepped forward and asked Man Bao, "How many did you buy?" "6, one for each person." Bai Erlang said to the boss, "One more." "Man Bao, although I promised to treat you to 2 servings, do you want to eat it now? There's a lot of delicious food ahead." Bai Erlang said, "I sent it to Mingda. Minda has it. Mingda eats what I bought, and the portion you buy is also mine, so you don't owe me anything." When Man Bao heard this, he was shocked. He didn't expect Bai to be so domineering. But she didn't mind, and she saved 10 cents, so she waved her hand and said to the boss, "Okay, give him another copy and he will pay." The stall owner responded with a smile, sliced another mutton from the leg of lamb hanging on the side, and grilled it on the iron plate. He is skilled and fast, and with the help of his 2 sons, he will take out sheets of dried lotus leaves that have been cut out in a short while, and directly put the fried roast meat on the lotus leaves for them, and then give them to them. Putting on 2 wooden sticks, he warned, "Be careful of burning." After Man Bao took it, he handed it to Bai Shan and Bai Dalan behind him, but Chang Yu was in a hurry. "How to take it, how to take it?" Man Bao taught her how to hold it without burning it. Chang Yu was too curious, "Why do you use lotus leaves instead of plates?" Man Bao, "It's only 10 cents, a plate may be worth 10 cents. He has a small place here, and there is no place to sit. Come, let me get it for you. Can you take a bite?" Chang Yu nodded again and again, took the wooden stick and poked at the meat, and leaned his head to try to take a bite, but after biting it in his mouth, he found that it was not easy to bite off, so he simply sucked it all into his mouth. She ate so much that her cheeks were puffed up, her whole face was filled with joy, and she was speechless. She could only nod her head fiercely at Man Bao, saying that it was delicious, much better than what they ate in the palace. Man Bao smiled and ate a piece. The meat was more tender than she expected, and it was juicy. It felt like it was full of gravy when she bit into her mouth. She nodded again and again and turned to look at Bai Shan. Bai Shan was also very surprised. He didn't expect this barbecue to be so delicious, so he asked the stall owner, "Where do you usually set up your stall?" The stall owner smiled and said, "I want Lang Jun to know that my family has a small shop on Dongsheng Street, outer city gate, but during the Mid-Autumn Festival, everyone likes to walk outside, not to eat in the shop, so I turned here to set up a stall. Yes, it's just these 3 days, after the Mid-Autumn Festival, we still have to go back to Dongsheng Street." Bai Shan thought about where Dongsheng Street was. Man Bao had already eaten another piece and asked, "Is there a Ji Shitang there?" "Yes, there is a family Ji Shitang, which is not very far from the small shop." Man Bao turned his head and said to Bai Shan, "I see. Zhenggu told me before that there was a barbecue restaurant not far from Ji Shitang on Dongsheng Street in the outer city, and it was very delicious. He used to work there for a few days." The little shopkeeper, unfortunately, when the new shopkeeper took office, he returned to Ji Shitang in the inner city. I thought he was exaggerating. I didn't eat too much roast lamb, and there were a lot of delicious food, but now I know that it's true, it's so delicious. She turned around and asked the boss, "Is your family's name Zhangji?" The stall owner squinted his eyes and nodded again and again, "It's Zhangji." It turns out that the little lady recognizes the shopkeeper Zhang Xiao of Ji Shitang, so I will give you one more. Man Bao was very embarrassed, so he simply bought another 20 copies and said, wrap it up and I'll take it for my parents to taste later. This is big business, and the stall owner is laughing so hard that he can't see his eyes. Chang Yu was eating all the time, feeling sad in her heart while eating. There was too much delicious food outside the palace, but she couldn't leave the palace. She glanced at Bai Erlang, who was holding the lotus leaf for Mingda, and suddenly felt that it was not bad to be married. After marriage, she could at least go out freely. She could eat whatever she wanted, and eat wherever she wanted. The boss carefully wrapped 20 portions of barbecued meat in lotus leaves. Bai Dalan saw that they were all eating in amazement, so he stepped forward to check out. Man Bao wanted to get his own money back, so he turned his head and smiled and said, "Okay, I don't need to be so clear about what my senior brother invited you to, and my dad and the others will definitely eat it later." Man Bao responded with a smile. Everyone bought the roast mutton, and they were almost finished, and the rest were in their hands while walking down and eating. The servants in the palace carefully walked in front to guide them. Man Bao and Chang Yu were at the front, Bai Erlang and Mingda were in the middle, Bai Shan and Bai Dalan were behind, and Daji and the guards were behind them. When they were eating mutton just now, Daji had already greeted the guards in the palace, and they followed directly on both sides, so that not only could they separate others, but also those who were traveling with them would not be inserted and separated. Daji has a lot of experience in shopping with the little masters. He knows that if the two sides do not guard, it is easy to be inserted, and it is easy to get separated at that time. But they are not afraid of getting separated. They just divided their heads. The guards just stared at Princess Mingda and Princess Changjiao. Everyone has someone to protect, just follow her, and the others don't care. The same goes for the guards of the Bai family. Going further is the light shed set up by various shops, which are even more lively and crowded. Man Bao stretched out his hand to hold Chang Yu, looked back at Bai Er, who was squinting with a smile, and said, "Bai Er, look at Ming Da." Bai Erlang waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I won't lose her." Mingda smiled and said, "Just the front and back feet, how could they be lost?" It wasn't until the words were finished, and suddenly there was an exclamation from nowhere, and then there was a burst of crying, "Child, child, my child was taken away, there is Peiwazi, er niu dash. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1997. The crowd was chaotic, and Bai Shan was startled. He wanted to walk up to Man Bao, but it was too late. The people on the side seemed to be helping to find the children. The isolation rushed between them, and with the wrong eye, Bai Shan couldn't see Man Bao, and even Bai Erlang couldn't see it. Bai Shan could only shout loudly, "Man Bao, Bai Er, go to the lampshade, go to Ji Shitang or go back to the lampshade of our Bai family, did you hear it?" Bai Erlang hugged Mingda tightly, and stretched out his hand to push the person who was pressing him out to avoid squeezing her. He heard it, but he didn't have time to respond at this time. Mingda only felt that there were people everywhere, and only Bai Er gave her a space. When she looked up, she could only see one person, not even the lanterns on both sides. Her heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but reached out and touched the bracelet on her hand. When she touched it, it was still there. She took a deep breath quietly and found that her breathing was smooth and there was no peculiar smell, so she breathed a sigh of relief. She stretched out her hand to grab Bai Er, and was about to ask the guard, when she caught a glimpse of a guard trying to push people away with difficulty, but another person squeezed in beside her, and she couldn't see the guard for a moment. Bai Er, who also looked up and looked for the guards, found that the guards who were still beside them had been washed away, and felt that people walking around were constantly hitting him, and there were screams everywhere. People who walked past him didn't know what was on his back, and the scraping on his back was so painful that he couldn't look back, or even touch it with his hands. He hugged Mingda tightly with both hands, and opened his arms as much as possible to leave room for her. He waited for a while and found that there was still no guards coming over, so he simply protected Mingda and walked in the direction of the crowd, gritted his teeth and said, "Let's go forward, go to the right as far as possible for a while, where it is easy to get out." This was the first time Mingda encountered such a thing, and nodded with a pale face. The screams, roars, and crying in the crowd became louder and louder. Bai Erlang noticed that someone's hand was touching his waist and dragged all the jade pendants and money bags from him. He was so angry that his eyes were red for a while, but he still hugged Mingda. He noticed that someone was going too far. He even touched Princess Mingda's hand and waist. The thumb slid down the hand and pressed it hard, and a person behind him screamed. Bai Erlang snorted coldly, dropped his hand, and slammed his whole body along the source of the sound. The crowd screamed, and half a circle was vacated from the crowd that was so crowded that it was difficult to even lift up. When Bai Erlang saw this, he didn't care to get his money bag and jade pendant back. He hugged Mingda and walked quickly to both sides, and squeezed it out through a gap. Mingda's hair was a little messy, and the man behind her was so powerful that she almost bumped into a table. The stall owner who set up a stall next to him saw the crowd suddenly crowded, and he moved the table back in fear, but even so, he was still crowded with people, and he couldn't do business at all. Bai Erlang hugged Mingda around behind the stall owner, and asked her by the light of the lantern, "Are you injured?" Mingda held the bracelet on her wrist tightly with one hand. The bracelet was almost taken away just now. She was a little scared, but when Bai Erlang asked, she shook her head and looked at the crowd in front of her worriedly. "Man Bao, Sister Chang Yu, and the people around me are still inside." Bai Erlang was also anxious, but he comforted her and said, "It's okay, Princess Changjia will be fine as long as she follows Jin Manbao. She has a needle on her body." He added, "The people around you are not afraid. As long as no one falls, it will relax when someone walks out." At this time, Bai Shanzhen was striving to go out. He was not very worried when the crowd was congested at first, and he wanted to follow the crowd to find out. After all, they were all moving forward just now. But soon, the cry became louder and louder, and then there were the voices of various people calling "second girl," accompanied by the exclamations of everyone. Bai Dalan stood on tiptoe and glanced at it, and saw that the crowd in front of the left was chaotic, and people in front were constantly crowding towards that place. His intuition was bad, so he didn't go forward at all, but dragged Daji and Bai Dalan and said, "Let's turn around and go out." Bai Dalan was in a hurry. "What are you going to do? The two princesses are in front, they can't have an accident." "Of course I know, but how do so many people find them? If they don't have an accident, then everyone will be safe." Bai Shan believes in Man Bao and Bai Er, and doesn't think they will lose the two princesses. With them by their side, it doesn't matter if the guards and the palace people don't keep up. He said, "What is important now is that people on this section of the road do not have any accidents. This is the main street, extending in all directions. I don't know how many people on the street are walking this way. They are looking for human traffickers. People inside can't get out. People keep pouring in, something must happen, let's go out first and find Brother Tang." When Bai Dalan heard this, he gritted his teeth, turned around and followed Bai Shan and pushed the person in front of him to the side. People kept insulting and screaming, but they slammed their teeth and switched to the other side, and then followed the direction of the crowd. "Go out." Daegil squeezed a way for them. As soon as he arrived at the spacious place, Bai Shan immediately ran out. After running for a long time, he looked back at the crowd that was still crowded behind him, and immediately turned to look at Daji. "Look, which store is near here, the best one? It's a restaurant or something, right at the corner of the two intersections, and it's the highest. Daji is tall and has good eyes." He glanced at a corridor in front of him. "Master, there. Go." Bai Shan ran away. The three ran to the door. Bai Shan glanced at a restaurant and saw that it was a restaurant. He walked in. The man smiled and was about to say hello. "Come downstairs and meet me." "Treasurer." He looked up and down Bai Shan, and seeing that he was a little embarrassed, but dressed well, he squeezed a smile and said, "What's the matter with Lang Jun looking for a servant?" Bai Shan searched on his body, found the sign for entering and leaving the palace gate, raised it to the shopkeeper, and said with a sullen face, "Let them come down." The shopkeeper didn't dare to call haha, he hurriedly smiled and answered, and then ran upstairs to call for someone. After a while, a guard came downstairs and looked up in dissatisfaction. When he saw it was Bai Shan, his face changed immediately. His heavy feet immediately became lighter, and he quickly ran down a few steps. Before bowing, it turned out to be Mr. Bai. What is the matter for Mr. Bai to instruct the younger? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1998. Seeing that he was the only one coming down, Bai Shan asked in a low voice, "Are you two on duty?" "Yes, there is one more person up there." "Then you go to Tang Shuexiang and tell him that the section from the inner city gate to here is all congested, but some children have been stolen in the middle, they are looking for children now, and the people inside can't come out at all right now, but people on the streets in all directions are still coming to the main street." He lowered his voice and said, "Once someone stumbles and falls." The guard shivered. Why didn't they go home for the Mid-Autumn Festival, but squatted in the tea house and restaurant? Isn't it just to prevent this? He didn't dare to be negligent, and said quickly, "Young Master Bai, you have to go up and take a look again." "I'll go with you." The four of them hurried up to the third floor, but they were not finished. There was a small attic above the third floor. Tang he asked them to guard the attic. There was a window where most of the street could be seen. He arranged this not only to prevent congestion, but also to prevent fires and other accidents. When Bai Shan entered, he smelled the smell of alcohol. The yeoman sitting inside was sitting on a stool and dangling his legs to eat fried beans. When he saw so many people coming in, he stood up in shock, so he asked his companion who this was. He recognized Baek Sun in the dim light. His blood froze instantly. The officer who led Bai Shan upstairs laughed again and again. Bai Shan just didn't know what to do, went straight to the window, turned his head and said to them, "Look, two brothers." The two of them were still a little uneasy when they were called out by their elder brother Bai Shan. They immediately forgot about their drinking, eating meat, and absenteeism during their shifts, and immediately stepped forward to watch. Stretching out their heads and looking forward, the two of them saw the densely packed heads and the scolding from time to time. The two of them were so frightened that cold sweat poured out from their backs. "This." A yeoman hurriedly said, "I'm going to evacuate." "Wait," Bai Shan grabbed him and said, "It's not up to the two of you. One of you will find Brother Tang, and he will handle it. The other will quickly find a way to notify the nearby people to come and help. Bai Shandao, you should also have an emergency contact method, right?" "Yes, gongs and drums," the officer said. "Find the gongs from the nearby officers, and the chief officer to play the drums. In terms of grades, they will play the gongs if they can solve the trivial matters themselves, and only play the drums when there is a particularly important matter that must be reported to the county magistrate or the Jingzhou government. Bai Shan, then fight." So, officer ran downstairs. From here, he was going to run through the drum tower after 3 intersections. It was a watchtower with drums. He would have also informed the magistrate through there. On this side, the second officer stretched the gong out of the window and struck it according to the secret language. Bai Shan stood at the other side of the window and looked at the increasingly crowded and chaotic crowd on the street. Bai Dalan was also watching. He said, "We have to stop and evacuate the people who are here, and let the people inside come out." Bai Shan's eyes wandered on the street. When he saw the person he was looking for, he turned around and was about to go downstairs. He said to the second officer, "Come downstairs in a while." He went downstairs, took out the purse, took out a silver ingot of 1.5 taels from it, and handed it directly to the shopkeeper, in exchange for copper coins. The shopkeeper hesitated. "This 5 hangings, and another $500. The shopkeeper immediately smiled and said, "The shop still has so many copper coins. If Lang Jun goes elsewhere, I'm afraid he won't be able to get so much." He took the scale and weighed it first, and after confirming that it was a full tael of silver ingots, he bent down and opened the cabinet at the bottom, took out 5 pieces of money from the inside, opened the drawer again, and gave Bai Shan 5 strings of money from it, smiling, "Lang Jun count." "No need." Bai Shan only reached out and took a bunch of them, and the rest Daji asked the shopkeeper to ask for a cloth bag, put it in and put it in his hand. Bai Shan walked out with a bunch of money in his hand. Pedestrians on the road didn't pay attention, but a group of playful teenagers across the street were staring at the money in his hand and couldn't take their eyes off it. Bai Shan didn't slow down and walked directly to them. He didn't move his hand holding the copper coins. He just stood in front of them, swept them around and asked, "I remember someone named Das Han." The eldest boy immediately called out, "Brother Das Han, I know that he is with his sister-in-law at home. Lang Jun wants to find brother Das Han." Bai Shan didn't even think that Das Han would be married. He still asked him to make a name for himself when he came to the capital at the beginning of the year. He said, "He's the best in nature, and it's fine when he's not there." "What about Xiao Wu? Fifth brother?" "He's on another street now." The young man swallowed while looking at Jian, patted his chest and said to Bai Shan, "Lang Jun can tell us anything, we can all run errands." Bai Shan looked at him critically, and the 7 or 8 young boys behind him ranging from 8 to 12 or 13. They straightened their backs immediately, their chests raised a lot, and wanted to pretend that they were strong. Bai Shan reluctantly said, "Okay, you two go to the cloth shop to buy red cloth strips, and let the shop cut them. It's enough to be as wide and as long as it is. I want 20 strips. Let a few more strips. If you're going to bring 2 tables or benches, put them in front of this intersection." He handed the dangling money in his hand to the young man and said, "It's faster, half a quarter of an hour is enough." The young man took it immediately, opened the rope and shoved out more than 20 texts. Without reading it, he directly stuffed it into the hands of a young man behind him, raised his chin and said, "Come on." The young man ran forward, very flexible, and he disappeared when he turned left and right. The young man in the lead tied up the money again and stuffed it into the clothes on his chest, looking bulging and heavy, but he didn't care at all, and asked, "What does the sun want us to do?" "Block people," Bai Shan said, "stop people coming from this street, and the 2 people who come out from the street. They can go back or go to both sides, but they are not allowed to go forward." The boy's face stiffened. Is it all blocked?" "Yes." Bai Shan turned around and took the cloth bag from Daji's hand, weighed it, and let the copper coins inside make a pleasant sound. He said, "You have done a good job, and these will be yours after the event is completed." The sound of the copper coins was really nice, especially when so many coins collided together. The young man stared at the cloth bag in his hand and couldn't move his eyes. He swallowed sharply and wanted to agree, but he shook his head with difficulty. "No, we can't stop so many people, and the official knows, we can't eat and walk around." The voice just fell, and the upstairs officer B, who had already knocked the gong 3 times, ran down and came directly to Bai Shan. "Master Bai, the little one has already knocked, and they will come over soon." The young man opened his mouth wide, looked at the clerk, then looked at Bai Shan, and immediately said, "Young master, don't worry, leave this to us, we will definitely do it for you. See you tomorrow." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1999. The officer Yi, who was about to speak, was stuck in his throat. He glanced at the young man and saw the copper coins in his clothes with a sharp gaze, and asked, "Bai Gongzi, is this little bastard looking for you?" "Trouble. Bai Shandao, I asked him to do things, and you will evacuate the crowd with them in a while. First stop the people coming from 3 intersections and let them go to 3 places, but you can't go any further and evacuate all the people inside." While he was talking, the boy who went to buy the red cloth ran back out of breath with 20 pieces of red cloth in his hand. Bai Shan immediately asked them to untie the red belt and tie it to his wrist, and he tied it himself. 1, and the rest will be handed over to Daji. When they did this, 2 yeomen came from 2 places. The place they were on duty was not very far from here, and they were a group of 2, but they couldn't completely ignore their jurisdiction, so they left a colleague. "Just come over to see the situation." But 3 were enough. Bai Shan asked them to guard the intersection with each of them and Bai Dalan with 3 teenagers, while he and Sergeant B went to evacuate the crowd. Bai Dalan knew Bai Shan's plan now, and naturally tried his best to cooperate, so the 4 teams dispersed. When the 3 intersections are stopped, those who want to pass will either go directly to another street, or turn around and go in the direction of the Imperial City, or they can only turn back, and no one is allowed to go to the inner city gate. At the same time, Bai Shandaji and Officer Y stood on the congested section of the road, found one after another, and divided them directly to the 3 intersections. No one was allowed to walk around, so as not to cause further congestion. However, although no one enters the 3 intersections here, and people continue to be separated, the chaos inside is still getting worse and worse. Bai Shan seems to hear people screaming and shouting, "Don't squeeze, someone fell." His expression changed, and he pointed at the roof after pulling over the officer and said, "Climb up and tell them that the traffickers have been caught and the children have been found, so everyone is not allowed to crowd." The officer also heard the scream, and his forehead was covered in sweat, "But Mr. Bai, we didn't find the trafficker at all. Why do you care about this at this time? Let's save the lives of these people first, go." The officer gritted his teeth, hung the gong on his waist, and ran directly to the store. After going up to the 2nd floor, he opened the window and climbed up to the roof. Quiet. There was only less noise on the chaotic and noisy streets. It was noisy for a long time, and people were screaming and crying everywhere. Bai Shan dragged one and pushed them out, telling them to leave the place immediately, not to stay here, and all offenders would be fined. If he said that all the offenders would be convicted, there might still be people standing and trying to join in the fun. As soon as he said he would be fined, the people who had just squeezed out of the crowd reluctantly left. Seeing that the yeoman on the roof couldn't call anyone, he could only walk along the roof and shout what Bai Shan asked him to shout: "The traffickers have already caught the child, and the child is now in the county yeoman, and no one is allowed to walk around and crowd. Don't overhear, walk slowly towards both sides and the gaps. The traffickers have been caught, the child is now in the county office, and no one is allowed to make chaos." The officer stepped on the roof and stepped forward cautiously, while shouting loudly. At this time, someone in the distant place banged the drum sound. A drum tower was passed on to a drum tower, and soon the drum beside the county government office was beaten. The officer translated the code and immediately rushed to the county government office. Tang He, who was sitting in the county government office, stood up when the drum sounded. He got up and walked to the yard to listen to it. His face changed as soon as the drum sound stopped. "I'm afraid to go to Lanhe Street from the inner city gate. There are stampedes, people coming, and ink research." He turned around and entered the room, writing while writing, "Go to prepare horses, leave half of the staff in the county office, and the others follow me to Lanhe Street, and let the people guarding at the 345 intersection immediately start heading towards the inner city gate on the main street. Evacuate people from places and try to persuade people not to go to Main Street." When he said this, he gritted his teeth. "Every year, we have to set up a light shed in that area, and obviously I have been persuaded to spread it out, so I have to crowd it all together." The master said, "It's lively, the lamp holder and the phoenix of the Ministry of Industry are there, and everyone wants to join in the fun." Tang He said, "Next year, the county will force them to disperse." Worrying about it every year, he felt that his hair was missing. He wrote down all the precautions and handed it to the master. "Use the drum order, prepare the horse, let's go out. Riding now. Let them get out of the way. Is it better to let the horse run than to let him run across on two legs? And he can't necessarily let people give way, but horses can." Tang He directly mounted the horse arrogantly, and directly hit the horse to run towards Lanhe Street. "It's impossible, there are so many people on the street, even if the officers call for people to move away, the horse can only trot forward." But the trot is not slow. In more than a quarter of an hour, Tang He went from the county office to Lanhe Street. There were too many people here. Many people came from the direction of the inner city gate. He knew at a glance that someone was evacuating, so he put the horse, throw it to the entourage, and take the clerk directly to run over there. Bai Shanzheng pushed the people who still wanted to squeeze out. His face turned blue with a calm expression, and his voice was almost hoarse. "I can't go here for the time being, change the place." "You can't go if you say you can't go, my home is over there, I'm going home now." Bai Shan's eyes froze, and he shouted, "Daji." Daji stepped forward and pressed his chest with one hand, stared at him with piercing eyes and asked, "What did you say?" The man stuttered when he looked at the tall and strong Daji. My home is over there." Bai Shan has ignored him, stretched out his hand and grabbed the man with the disheveled hair squeezed out and pushed him directly behind him. "Walk down that street, don't look back." He grabbed the next person who was dizzy and pushed him to the other street. "You go over there." Bai Ji also brought a few teenagers who were hoarse and forbid people to come here, and then continuously evacuated people passing through this intersection. Tang He ran to the front and met Bai Shan's eyes. Without saying a word, he waved his hand behind him and ordered, "Evacuate, whoever dares to come this way, take it directly." The officers all pulled out the knives in half, and shouted yes. The voice shook the hearts of those who still wanted to go back this way, and then they silently turned around and slipped away. While arranging someone to help, Tang He asked Bai Shan, "What happened?" Bai Shan kept his hands on his hands, constantly diverting people from the inside to various intersections, and when he encountered an injured one, he let the boy on the side lead him to the shop on the side to sit and wait, and quickly reported, "The child is lost and said to be caught by human traffickers." The crowd becomes chaotic, too many people come in at various intersections. "You have made a mistake in limiting the flow." Tang He did not shirk his responsibility. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2000. Bai Shan continued, "I've seen it. 2 quarters ago, there were 4 intersections in the front, left and right were congested, and someone fell. I guess someone should be seriously injured. I have sent someone to call Ji Shitang and 100 Herbs Hall, but tonight is Mid-Autumn Festival, the medicine hall is estimated to have only doctors on duty." Tang He asked, "Where's Zhou Man?" Bai Shan's face was even more ugly. "She's inside." After a pause, he lowered his voice and said, "Princess Mingda and Princess Changjiao are also inside." Tang He was stunned, glanced at Bai Shan, turned his head and summoned a subordinate, and said, "Go and ask Lord Yin to send the Imperial Guard." Tang He had 1,000 words in his heart at the moment, so that he couldn't say a word. When he was about to discuss with Bai Shan what to do about other things, he heard the sound of the gong, and then a loud voice. From the top of the head, Human traffickers have been caught. He looked up and saw one of his subordinates walking cautiously over the roof. Tang He. By Shandao, people who lost their children are very flustered, and it seems that there are a lot of family members, and it's very chaotic inside, so I asked him to appease people's hearts. Tang He glanced at him, is this just to appease people? He looked up at the officer on the roof and asked, how many of you are there? You can see that there is a stampede. Have you controlled your movement towards the side at the 5 intersections in front of you? Tang He learned about the situation over there through the second officer, and felt that Bai Shan was so slow, so he turned his head and instructed the other, send the drum order to stop the people who are going from Yiping Street, Yang Lane and Sanchi Street to the 345 intersection, to disperse the people who stayed at the intersections and those who came out of the main street. He saw several injured people sitting or lying in the store next to him, and said, all the injured people who have withdrawn will be placed in the nearest place first. Yes, the clerk took the order and left. After the arrangement, Tang He saw that the officers standing on the roof were hardly listened to, so he ran upstairs by himself. One of them turned over on the roof, banged the gong, and shouted loudly, this county is Chang'an County. Commander, if you don't want to die, give this county a little peace. It's a good festive night, do you want to walk out, lie down and go back to let the family do the funeral? The chaotic, noisy, and panicked crowd fell silent for a while, so Man Bao and Chang Yu, who were being crowded in the crowd, finally heard the voice. Only Tang He's voice came from a distant place. Everyone listening to the order, everyone stopped, and the county ordered ER to stop for 15 breaths. Now, it is spread by word of mouth, so that everyone around you will stop. So after a while, the people around Man Bao also shouted loudly in her ear. The county magistrate asked to stop for 15 breaths. The person who had been dragging Man Bao was a little flustered, and he was about to continue to squeeze out, but Man Bao grabbed her and smiled at her. Auntie, the Lord told us to stop, let's stop for a while. Stop. The person on the side quickly said, yes, yes, if you want to stop, you must stop. How could she possibly be willing to stop? In such a situation, the more chaotic the better, so when you open your mouth, you need to call. It would be better if everyone panicked, and the thought flashed. As a result, Zhou Man, who had been holding on to her, loosened and held on tightly behind her. Chang Yu, who was in the crowd, lifted her hand from the crowd and touched her neck with precision. She felt a tingling pain in her neck, and then when she was about to shout, she choked in her throat, and she lost her voice. She looked at Zhou Man in horror, but Man Bao couldn't see clearly because of the crowd, and took out a short needle from the space and stabbed it into the back of her neck. She couldn't use any strength in her hands in an instant. Hold Zhou Man's hand tightly and loosen. She wanted to turn away timidly, but her neck seemed to hit something sharp, and she didn't dare to move for a moment. Man Bao took away the long needle in his hand, swayed it in front of her eyes and put it on her neck again, and said with a soft laugh, Auntie, please don't move around, my hand is unstable, in case it accidentally pokes it. At the point of death, people may really die. It's strange, you won't die immediately if you get stuck in the dead end, but there is always a way to die slowly. She dared not move. Chang Yu grabbed her clothes tightly when Man Bao scratched her palm and let go of her hand. At this moment, he was sticking to her body, and he pierced the person with needles without blinking. The old woman, who looked very bad at first glance, was restrained, and she was very pleasantly surprised. Man Bao, you are amazing. Man Bao raised his head proudly. Of course, I have been thinking about what to do if I encounter such a thing since I was a child, and I have practiced it 1,000 times in my heart. Princess Changjia was stunned and asked, why do you think about encountering this kind of thing? She swallowed the word trafficker, fearing that it would cause panic again. Man Bao said, there is no way. I grew up listening to the story of Pei Wazi. The adults in our village and my family like to say pay waza the most. Children in the village go out, ranging from an 80-year-old old lady to an older child who is only 2 or 3 years older than the child who goes out. They cried when they were disobedient, or went to play in the mud and water. Not only her, but Bai Shan and Bai Erlang have all thought about what to do if they encounter human traffickers, and they also played the game of patting flowers with their friends in the village when they were children. Because Man Bao is younger than his classmates, he is always the child who is photographed, and he is particularly embarrassed. It is impossible for Chang Yu, who lives in the palace, to understand their game, but tonight she has gained some insight. Tang He has been instructing everyone to stop, first look around to see if anyone has fallen. If there is, the people around will hold up a gap, help them up first, and everyone will go out on the rack. This time Tang He gave them 120 breaths of time, and he took the gong and banged on it, 1 gong and 1 breath, and asked the people below to recite it together. As a result, half of the chaotic streets gradually calmed down, and they recited the number together. Finally, Tang He allowed them to move slowly to both sides. The speed should not be too fast. They had to wait for the person in front to move before they could walk. The further back they moved, the slower they moved. Everyone, no matter what the reason, can't walk around, messing up the walking camp. Tang He said loudly, the traffickers have already been caught, and people who lost their children should not be in a hurry. If there is more chaos, you must think about who the sin will fall on in the future. As soon as these words came out, the adults who were still trying to squeeze out to see the children stopped for a while, and then moved out slowly with everyone. While Man Bao and Chang Yu heard this voice, they looked up at the middle-aged woman in front of them. A long time ago, the crowd was in chaos for a while. When Man Bao was about to drag Chang Yu to the intersection, she was pulled by a middle-aged woman with one hand, and Chang Yu was also held at the same time, and then Man Bao was beaten. With a slap in the face, the woman shouted directly, "Why are you a child running around with your cousin? What should I do if I lose it? Come home with me quickly." At that time, Chang Yu was stunned. She raised her foot and wanted to kick someone, but she was surrounded by people. She didn't even have room to lift her foot, but this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Man Bao reached out and covered the blanket after hitting him in the face. He grabbed Chang Yu and responded with an "oh." Then he dragged Chang Yu and followed the woman who looked like a trafficker. See you at 9.